Welcome to Savage Minds. I'm your host, Julian Vigo. Today's guest is Wolfgang Streeck, who was born in 1946, studied sociology in Frankfurt am Main and at Columbia University. From 1988 to 1995, he was professor of sociology and industrial relations at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and from 1995 to 2014, director at the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Societies in Cologne. His research areas are comparative political economy and historical change. His most recent books include Taking Back Control, States and State Systems After Globalism, and How Will Capitalism End? Essays on a Failing System, Buying Time, The Delayed Crisis of Democratic Capitalism, and Reforming Capitalism, Institutional Change in the German Political Economy. I welcome Wolfgang Streeck to Savage Minds. Your description of the current era as interregnum, this period of lasting uncertainty where the old order is dying and the new one is struggling to be born, if at all. I wanted to know, dealing with the current era where we've got a genocide on one side, we've got presidents being kidnapped on the other, what does this interregnum mean for the stability of daily life for the next decade or so?
Yeah, what do I know? We are both puzzled, no? Not just you, me too. These are events that would not have been predicted only a year ago. On the other hand, as a social scientist, you're interested not necessarily in novelties, but in continuities and in longer term trends and developments. And most of what we're seeing now can be subsumed under the heading of the decline of a global empire and the uncertainties that this creates for the rest of the world and for the empire itself, and the breakdown of institutions, which means that all sorts of strange things can happen because the regulatory capacity of these institutions is weakened or has completely disappeared. For example, in American domestic policy, or politics, better, in the United States, there were sort of many different codes of conduct that were not to be found in the Constitution, but informally presidents did some things, but they never did some other things. They never insulted their predecessors. They took the two houses of Congress seriously, to some extent at least. They used this sort of elevated American rhetoric, which describes themselves as the forces of good and of virtue in the world and the need to spread democracy. All of this has disappeared, and somehow the naked realities are coming through. And if you don't have a longer term perspective, then this is all sensationally new. But the United States have gone to war in this century alone, at least in 3 or 4 cases. And so Iraq, Libya, Syria, places in Latin America, and so on. So in that sense, the new man in the White House is not so different. In fact, as I said recently, if you look at the number of people he has killed up to now, it's sort of absolutely ridiculously minuscule compared to Obama and Bush II.
I've been making this argument on my wall today. In fact, just before coming on to speak with you, I'm like speaking to myself, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Because my wall is a sight to be seen. Let's put it that way. I believe in equality. I believe that the ills of capitalism are creating the current crisis and many others before. I also lived through lockdown here, as we just mentioned before, going on. And that did such great harm to our society, to my children directly as well, by the way. And this government here, and I don't mean just Meloni, I mean every government since, has just done its best to let's avoid talking about it. And so when I'm seeing people even linked to their articles calling Trump a fascist, Meloni a fascist, she's a fascist, and I'm like, oh, whoa, let's go back to what happened. You want to talk about ICE? It's been around for 23 years. Where were you?
Yeah.
I was writing about the disappeared Muslim men in New York on the corner of Avenue H, Coney Island Avenue. Thousands of men were disappeared. Nobody talked about it, not even Democracy Now! And now here you are, Trump is... let's not personalize this. There's a problem with power in institutions. This isn't about Trump bad, Obama good. And then I said exactly what you just said. Obama has deported. He was the great deporter. And yes, many people were killed. There were 36 chases of immigrants that resulted in deaths. There was another 4 dozen deaths as they were being arrested, as we have seen recently. And so I've been pointing out to my fellow leftists that I do not know if it is such a great idea that we get behind some of these groups. And there are groups in Minnesota that are advocating for shooting police, for hitting police. And I'm like, you can do it. But even if I tried that in France, or if I tried that in Germany, if I tried that in the center of London, I would not only be arrested, I'd put myself at physical peril.
Sure.
I fear that what's going on now is that the left has become amnesiac. And I reminded my interlocutors on my Facebook wall that where were they when Biden was in office about the deportations? Where were they when Obama was droning to death South Asia?
Yeah, hellfire.
You know, on the left, I feel like I'm watching a football game between Milano and you name the other team. I'm not interested in football politics. Yeah, Inter. Yeah, there's a real problem that we have when the left is failing to critique itself, even its past inactions, and this kind of football mentality where they capitulate to their own political figures and at the same time are right front and center talking about ICE every day since last January. And of course, then I'm accused of being a Nazi, of being Hitler, and I'm just like, oh, you know, I cannot eyeball roll enough for these people. So this interregnum, in fact, comes to mind, or maybe as Giorgio Agamben or Jean-Luc Nancy have also written about this kind of state of exception. But we're in a state of exception, not just from the ruler down. I feel like on the left, there's a problem in organization and appropriate response if we're not going to say, hey, let's not beat up police and spit on them. And I feel like we're in a crisis here. So I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously, you've written a lot about OECD capitalism and the idea that we've surpassed the age of the post-war golden era of democratic capitalism. I feel like a lot of the anger coming out of these groups, and not all of them are leftists, some of them are neoliberals, let's be clear. I feel like there's a lot of anger about the failure of capitalism not having given to these folks. I feel like a lot of the anger about Trump is this displacement. I mean, Trump derangement syndrome is clear, but I feel like there's a whole generation of under 35s who are very angry about their inability to move out of their parents' house. So I'm just wondering if you might speak about this link between what we're seeing on the streets. Because another thing I also noted to people is, why is what's happening in Minnesota so different than what's happening in any march across the country against Gaza? Those protests are not violent. Somehow it's only ICE that's become the focus of your ire, where the police state in the U.S. is not news. The police state in Canada is not news. There's been lots done on the police state in Canada since the 1950s. So why is it that we're somehow parsing out good and bad actors? And then let's not forget, these ICE officers are largely remnants of the global war on terror. And I point this out to these people. These are working class men who do not have an iceberg's chance in hell of getting a job after returning from these horrible wars in Iraq and
Yeah.
Afghanistan, and Iraq won. So you're spitting on someone. I mean, I just don't see the dialogue. And part of me thinks, Wolfgang, that we're at this impasse where the left will not listen to the right at all. And even then, it's not a left right issue anymore, because this kind of left that I'm referring to isn't really left. It's an odd mixture of leftists and neoliberals. And then, of course, we know that there are hooligans in the mix that are probably paid interferers as well.
Well, you're putting this all very well. See, what is the left? A left exists only where there is an organization of the left. Now, in the sense that uh, people have sentiments, they have impressions, they see things, they have a sense of justice. This is sort of the raw material of politics. It's not yet politics. It turns into politics if there is a context in which people's observations and feelings and moral principles can be discussed, unified, transformed into something like a strategy inside a society where one wants to bring this to bear, this common uh, formulation of what we as the people want, and how we want justice to be done in our lives, in our society. Justice is a complex concept that you have to think about what it is, and you've put very nicely put the dilemmas and internal contradictions and the complexities of this. Now, I would think that uh, we're in a anomic situation as far as the left goes. There's sort of dispersed people, dispersed organizations. There is nothing that could enable. Look at the United States, where's the Democratic Party? Where's the Democratic Party? It leaves its potential constituents alone, and it refuses to help them unify their different perspectives and turn them into something that combines, connects people. That would be the precondition of collective action in pursuit of collective left egalitarian goals. Nothing like this is there, and we have turned out to be unable to develop an alternative to the agenda that now in the second Trump term is being pursued with a great deal of consciousness and reflexivity, if you want. They now have a program. They now have a program. They now know what they want to do. Not completely, in the sense that, for example, I would say, looking at the Trump administration 1 year into its into this term, I think what you see is that they are not yet clear what "Make America Great Again" actually means. For a long time, they told their followers that making America great again means to withdraw from adventurous foreign policies that make no sense whatsoever, and divert attention to the absolutely dismal condition of American society, to try to do something for them. At the same time, make America great again could also mean, and sometimes you think this is what it really is to mean, that is to restore American global hegemony that has become, since the financial crisis, sort of weakened and weakened and weakened, and the rise of China and so on. So what is it that they want to do right now? Right now, they are still paying for the genocide in Palestine. They may be getting ready for a war with Iran. Uh, absolutely mad, an absolutely mad idea. Continuing this, I would say, American habit of attacking people who cannot defend themselves and just killing them by the hundreds of thousands, and then going back to the United States and declaring victory, like in Iraq or Syria and these places. They leave a big mess and then they go home. And my God, why? Because up to now with the disappearance of the Soviet Union, they were able, actually, with a certain justification, to imagine themselves as an invincible ruler of the world. They causing one of my favorite metaphors in this context is after they had uh, done all this the damage to Iraq and lost the war there. Basically, they lost the war because no war objective was reached. Could you imagine the Navy of Iraq coming to the United States, to Chesapeake Bay, and ask the American government to turn over George Bush, so that George
I wish
Bush.
they had.
Yeah, but they cannot. That is the problem. That is the problem. The United States can lose any war. They can do anything in the world. Nobody can get at their throat because they are living on this huge island, which is called North America. That is protected by two seas, on the east and on the west, and two states in the north and in the south that are basically half American dominions, whatever the Canadians right now say. And American troops are already in Greenland and in North Canada, and they are in Mexico. What else can you want? This country for a long time thought that they can do anything they want and nothing could punish them for them. Now suddenly there are the Chinese, and the big puzzle for the United States is what to do with them. Share the world with them, or attack them now, as long as you might possibly win a war, and then restore American supremacy. The reason why I'm explaining all this is that I think that this is behind the present situation of indecisiveness, of institutions that do no longer work. The things that we have gotten used to in the last 30 years no longer exist, and we cannot rely on them anymore. And now is the moment, as you said at the beginning, now is the moment of these surprises that come every day, and we have just no word for them.
I think you put your finger on it. And what disturbs me amongst my fellow people who think they are on the left is that they believe this is Trump. And
Yeah.
I have a problem with this kind of ahistorical representation because Noriega much, what we did in Guatemala in the 50s, the Sandinistas. I was teaching at Universidad de Managua, and one day returning from Atagalpa, I had bullets coming at me that were bought and paid for by the Heritage Foundation and the Bush family.
Yeah.
Bush Sr., by the way. The reality is that if you start to go around the world and do a map search, or even now use AI, it's very easy to do. Very few countries have not had attempted coups, subversive actions, financed directly or indirectly by the United States, on top of direct military operations. So when people pretend, I mean, yes, this is an overt kidnapping, but let's face it, that's what we did with Noriega. Let's go to Libya. Let's go to this false flag operation with Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah,
U.S.
yeah,
war. This is a proxy war,
of
and
course.
we know it. And then you've got your wonderful country woman, Ursula
Yeah.
von der Leyen, who's
Oh,
going
yeah.
around pimping out the great fear of Putin. But let's go back
Yeah.
to high school books. High school books throughout Canada and the U.S. state very clearly World War II was ended because of my people. My people came and rescued Europe. I mean, this is an
Yeah.
insane proposition, whilst
Yeah.
eclipsing the millions who died from Russia and, well, the former
Yeah.
Soviet Union. But let's just forget about facts. And so I feel like when I'm talking to people who say, Meloni's a fascist, Trump's a fascist. Okay, everyone's a fascist. I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like I either want to become a psychotherapist and open my doors to these people because that's going to get us nowhere on the left. Calling everyone a fascist is actually quite offensive to actual fascism historically.
No, I think you're absolutely right. It so diminishes what fascism really is, and what it really tells us. I mean, this use of the concept is that we do not have a dialogue inside the left on what violence, military power, the role of the United States. How are we to think about it? And then we just think, oh, it's awful, and everything that is awful is fascist, and therefore we call it so. And in order, and the only sort of purpose this can have is to show to the world that we are good people, that we are on the right side, because these are the fascists. But it doesn't help anyone, and the serious thinking about what people like us can do in this world in which public discourse is dominated by X and Amazon and whatever these people are called, and in a world in which there is uh, where capitalism has gotten hold of the social links between people that link people up to each other, and it's all sort of penetrated by the huge profit-making machines that are called social media. We're no longer talking directly to each other. We're talking through these things. We don't know who's going to watch, who is watching us, who is who's compiling statistics about the words that we're using. And we're living in a strange world. I'm a social scientist, so I use all these. I use modern research tools. One of the modern research tools that you might possibly know is called Ngram, which which uh, which gives you the possibility, in a matter of a few seconds, to ask Google how often a particular word has appeared in printed books from, let's say, 1950 to now. Account for every year. You see these wonderful curves. Certain words go up, others go down, and so on. And it is like, how the hell are they doing this? If they can do that, if they can count a million of books in a matter of a few seconds, well, what can they do with what we say on the telephone? Yeah, uh, and so I feel we're entirely lacking any capability to liberate ourselves from the automatized supervision that this new class of absolutely unbelievably rich people is sort of imposing on us. Yes, yes, and if that is what it is, then imagine organizing a viable left. Uh, they know all the divisions among the potential constituents of the West. They have psychologists and statisticians and literature comparative literature specialists who can tell them what the issues are that you could sort of push in order to divide the potential opposition to this hyper capitalist world that is beginning to try to control us. That is that much different from the way in which the Chinese government controls its people? No, the Chinese speak about it openly, and they sort of can more easily do what they would like to do with someone who they identify as a dissenter. In our countries, we have certain ideas left of liberal democracy. We have to defend them, but we don't know how to do it against these huge, gigantic machines. See, look, the reason why we're talking is that I think that's the sort of thing that you are doing, other people are doing, which I call the samizdat of hypermodernity. How samizdat was.
I was thinking of samizdat as you were speaking.
Yeah,
I kept thinking about not just the Canadian Prime Minister's reference to Havel, but I was thinking of even Bohemil Hrabal.
Yeah. What you're doing is you're organizing the samizdat of the hyper-technological world of today, and that there have to be many more. There are many now, and quite a few people are now taking to these formats in order to give themselves and others an opportunity to exchange views, serious views on what is being done to us. But if you ask me, the longer I think about this, or I talk about this, the more clear it gets to me how deeply discouraged we often are, because deep back in our minds, we know how little we at this point can do. So, for example, recent work on income distribution in all our supposedly advanced capitalist societies, the number of billionaires or trillionaires or whatever has sort of gone up like whatnot in the last 20 years, and at the bottom, the number of people who come the 25th day of a month no longer know how to buy the milk for their children, because they are waiting for their paycheck on the 31st. Yes, the number of these people is increasing all over the Western world, even in societies. Even in my country, I live in Germany. We for a long time thought that our social welfare state institutions were better. More stable than other countries. No, we're here too. The number of very, very super rich people is growing, and our fastest growing industry, so to speak, is what we call in German the tables. What are the tables? These are these food distribution centers where people can go and they get free food, which these centers collect from supermarkets, which is sort of a few days beyond their how do you say it?
The expiration date.
Yeah, expiration date. Yeah. And this is the fastest growing industry in this country, because more and more people need this kind of thing in order to feed themselves. There's now even tables for pets. So people who have a dog and that may be the only companion that they have left, they have to go there to collect dog food because they can't buy the dog food for their dog.
Well, Wolfgang, this is what's happening here in Italy as well. Ever since the quote-unquote war in Ukraine, people have been unable to heat their homes. That's not being covered in the media. The media said Rai 1, 2, 3. No. In fact, when they rolled out the psychological bonus, it was called the bonus psychologica. They didn't say it's because loads of people have lost their minds because we've put you in an almost 2 year lockdown. No, no, they don't mention this. They don't talk about the damages that happened because of lockdown. To me, oh my God, it was horrifying. On top of the fact that many of us, like, they didn't think about new immigrants. I had just moved here from Solingen. It was
Oh yeah.
horrifying what went on here.
Mhm.
Having to print out papers, to go to the supermarket, having to say to the police, people are making a big deal about ICE. Where were you in 2020? This was a police state. And not just here, by the way. Australia fared
Mhm.
very badly as
Oh
well.
yeah.
And so when you were
Yeah.
talking about the Samistat, I was thinking, in fact, at that moment when you said it, I was thinking of the wonderful film Das Leben der Anderen. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It talks about the spy culture of the Stasi in East Germany. And
Mhm.
I'm thinking that we're living that, but we're living that even within our own political homes. So when I critique the left and the people on my wall, but ICE is terrible. And I'm like, holy cow. Do you realize that the activists, and I'm not saying all or most are being violent, but there have been a lot of violent episodes that I've been investigating over the past few weeks. But I said, these are the same people that were beating up women and threatening to kill and rape them because these women wouldn't abide by identity politics. And they knew what I was talking about because a lot of people that follow me on Facebook have followed me for the work I did on the gender debate, where women are being threatened for saying he or for not saying woman. And you know what I'm talking about. So this has divided the
Yeah.
left. And I said, wait a
Yeah,
second.
sure.
So now you're upset
Sure.
about ICE. And
Yeah.
obviously, the use of
Yeah.
force the other day, terrible. But on the same
Yeah.
token, I don't think you should be using a car to try and escape or run over people, even if that was not your intention. I've been hit by a car. It's not fun. So I think
No.
we sort of lost the plot. You've written about activism and the strategies of the working class. And in the illusion of activism, you speak of the pulverization of collective agency. Is modern activism, particularly online or symbolic protests, merely a release valve that allows the capitalist interregnum to persist without facing real threats?
Yeah. Yeah. See, I think we have to seriously think about the enormous resources that our governments and the large corporations, which very increasingly are no longer easily separated from each other. The enormous resources that these organizations put into, you can say, I mean, mass control, yeah, control, population control, in the sense that they are very sophisticated practitioners coming from, I think, the advertisement industry, or switching between advertisement and mind control, manufacturing of consent, as our friend at the MIT calls it. The many people, I mean, the enormous amount of people who are working in this kind of growth industry, and in many ways, I think, in our different countries, the the uh, the, the pandemic was an opportunity to try out these various means of mind control. It has something to do with, for example, in this country, we had a journalist who's not never was famous because nobody wants to employ him. He wrote a very interesting book on the relationship between the research that was carried out at Wuhan in China uh, on viruses. All the major powers have since the 1960s worked on officially on the defense against biological warfare. But the trick with biological warfare is that in order to know whether a certain means of defense is actually effective, you have to have a certain supply of the means of aggression, so to speak, of the aggressive version, because otherwise you can't test it. And that was the way out of the very rigorous legislation by the American Senate that on American soil no such experiments with with biological warfare are allowed. And then, of course, the National Institutes of Health financed this stuff in Wuhan, in China, which was done under American with American finance, working on this particular virus, and you can say sharpening its capacity to actually hitch on the cells of the victim. In the meantime, it turned out lots of very famous virologists from all over the Western world regularly visited this particular laboratory, and the first cases of COVID took place in the environment of the laboratory. There's no that is completely obvious. So the question always was in the background whether there was a lab accident which caused this thing. If it was, then accidents happen. But the more interesting question is, what are these people doing research about? Should they be doing this? And should they be doing this in China, of all places? Probably in China, because there would be no journalist in China who would dare even ask a question about what they actually are doing in this place. So what I want to say is that there's absolutely no doubt that in this world there are sort of strange things going on, if you want, and they have a lot to do with advanced technology, biological as well as whatever technological. And as we don't know much about it, we cannot do much about it. And this enormous capacity to impose secrecy and to defend the secrecy of what these people are doing, that is absolutely interesting. And it again raises the question of whether there is a public discourse that can break through this. The final remark on this, the usual way of discouraging thinking about such things is to call you a conspiracy theorist. Now, as a sociologist, and I'm not an unknown sociologist, so to speak. As a sociologist, I used to tell my students, always avoid conspiracy theories, but allow for the fact that in the real world there may be conspiracies. Yes, and if you think about the enormous volume of things that the American government alone keeps as secrets that cannot be revealed to the public. Remember this man who is now still in Moscow, who put all these things on the internet. Suddenly it turns out now they say about this guy Jeffrey such and such, the pedophile in New York.
Epstein.
Epstein. Now they say they have 1 million pages of documents that they still have not been able to scrutinize so that they could deliver them to the public. 1 million. Where in the world have they stored this? Who has collected all this information on the guy? And what did they not know about him? And if that applies to this guy, then I want to know how many pages they have collected on any other people. Obviously, there's no limit to what they can collect. And our little legislation on privacy and on privacy protection it must be completely ridiculous. It must look completely ridiculous to those people who seem to have the capacity to collect during the life of a guy who died at about 50 or so more than 1 million pages. You understand what I mean?
Oh, no, I know what you mean. In fact, this gives birth to conspiracy theories on all sides of the political spectrum because
Yeah, not conspiracy theory, but conspiracy empirics. There
yes,
must
yes.
be there must be something going on here. Otherwise, it is not possible. Yes, 1 million pages is not a joke. And so someone, not just one, uh, I think an army of people must have been busy collecting stuff on the guy. Now the question comes up: why? Uh, he was friends with all sorts of nice people, from Prince such and such to whoever, uh, and and probably they wanted to know something about these people, or these people wanted to be sure that he couldn't tell something about them. And what was going on? And I'm just taking this as one slight, fine example of where this sort of prohibition on conspiracy theories prevents us from thinking about the really the theory, the conspiracy that is really going on, which is a conspiracy of data collection on people, obviously with an unlimited capacity.
You're listening to Savage Minds, and we hope you're enjoying the show. Please consider subscribing. We don't accept any money from corporate or commercial sponsors, and we depend upon listeners and readers just like you. Now, back to our show. It's odd that we're also living in this era of those files have been somehow not completely opened. A little bit was left. At the same time, we were promised with Trump coming into office, he was going to end Ukraine within 24 hours, I believe he claimed. Well, we see that hasn't happened because he turned that into, I call his presidency The Apprentice, Part 2, because he takes the office and he turns it, it's all about a real estate deal. And it's quite clever in a way because he just repeats it over and over. And of course, he made the mineral deal with Zelensky. So tit for tat, you give us this, we'll give you that. And Zelensky regularly goes to DC with his hand open. I found it hysterical when they were trying to negotiate a peace agreement and they sidelined him as if to show us all that he was never really in charge, right? So we saw it. And that's what I like about Trump is that he'll say the quiet part out loud. He will say what no other president would say, right?
No shame.
Yeah, no shame whatsoever. And while that's a human flaw, it's a bonus for those of us reading.
But look, it's not that. It's not just that. Now, in the mind of this person, there is no difference anymore between the private fortune of a billionaire and the well-being of a country. It sort of goes. It's completely one thing, and that tells us something about how modern capitalism in the last 20, 30 years has developed rapidly into a world in which the interests of the very rich and the interests of the public can no longer be kept apart because we have no idea what our interests are because we're not talking about it. We cannot talk about it. There's no organization that can promote this sort of collective dialogue. Whereas the others, remember the scene at Trump's inauguration when these 6 or 7 super billionaires were lining up behind him and listening to his incredibly stupid speech without moving their face because they knew this guy is one of us and he'll do our bidding. It doesn't matter what he says. You could say that in the United States at least, but increasingly elsewhere, the interests of big capital and the interests of the state have become basically indistinguishable. The means controlling the public, Peter Thiel and these people, they are in private hands. The defense, quote unquote, of Ukraine is in the hands of Elon Musk and his private satellites. If he switches off his satellites, Ukraine is gone. Nobody knows exactly how much the American state is now paying to these 5 or 6 huge, huge. How do you call them? I call them trillionaires. So how much is the state paying to them for all sorts of things that they are doing for the state? This sort of merging of the public into the private sphere, or vice versa, or the merging of the two into each other. This is not a matter that Trump invented. Mind you that I think in the Iraq War, a very large number of people on the American side were no longer soldiers. They were employees of large firms, and in order to keep these people in a job, you actually have to go and rape some other country because otherwise they would have to be fired.
The use of mercenaries was quite common.
Yeah.
And the problem is that even the Eric Prince was one of the biggest actors in that. He was the founder of Blackwater. Yeah. Then you had journalists such as Jeremy Scahill discover what horrendous crimes these men were up to. Yeah. And Eric Prince was able to rebrand. He's rebranded himself, just like they rebranded George W. Bush. Yeah. Now he's the peacemaker president who paints in his spare time. It's revolting. I mean, this rebranding, by the way, was done by the Democrats. Yeah. And there Hillary is holding George Bush's hand. I'm thinking, let's forget about all the war crimes these people have perpetrated, including Hillary Clinton, by the way. Yeah. But when you mention the growth of billionaires, it was just 10 days ago. We published a report on this, but the 3,000th billionaire was born, okay? About 10 days ago, we've got the 3,000th billionaire. But get this. Before lockdown, there were just over 2,000 billionaires, precisely 2,095 billionaires. Today, that stands at 3,028, meaning the billionaire wealth has increased by 81% since lockdown. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we know this. And we've seen the Jeff Bezos buying out Venice. Meanwhile, every Italian politician is very much against opening up Venice to a private wedding, right? Yeah. But you can if you're Jeff Bezos. Yeah. So this is part of the dilemma is we're facing an ecological crisis, and we're also at this point of where we are with Ukraine, where we now have reporting that pretty much demonstrates that the U.S. blew up the pipeline, costing us, you in Germany, those of us here in Italy, all over Europe, we're paying 4, 5, 10 times the price for this gas because
Yeah.
the U.S. bombed it, although some people are trying to blame Ukraine for this, as if.
Yeah.
And you talk about this Zeitenwende, the turning point in German foreign policy following the Ukraine war, which changed the role of Germany in Europe and the world. Now, with your leader, there's still this kind of push towards fighting the fascist and the Hitlerian Putin who's going to invade us. It's not just von der Leyen. We're getting this from everyone. Yet, if you speak to anyone on the streets, they don't want this. They don't believe this. It's as if there's a complete disconnect in our democracy here in Europe.
Yeah. Look, these people are desperate. In what sense are they desperate? If you look back in the last, let's say, 30 years, that's a very good period, because this begins when the Soviet Union disappears, and so the big enemy is gone. Then you see how in our societies, and one can say there is one big international capitalist society, which is you and us and the Japanese and so on. How all sorts of social, you would say, social maladies befall these countries. Rising public debt, an increase in people who are forever excluded from the community of hope, so to speak, that the capitalist society tried to organize. Things will get better with time. Yeah, a growing number of people have now learned that there is no progress for them. They can hope to somehow die off without seeing their income, their living conditions, their healthcare service improve. And they now even are beginning to see, a growing number of people, that this won't improve even for their children to the extent that they have any. So we're looking at a growing number of social dysfunctions in this country, but in the United States too. The physical infrastructure, bridges, railroad systems are rapidly disintegrating. In the United States, the social infrastructure, schools, are rapidly deteriorating. This is the richest country in the world, with one of the worst secondary education system in the world. Why do they have these wonderful universities? I was a sociology professor at Wisconsin for 7 years, and that was a wonderful time. But they are very selective. There are a few people in the United States who go to high schools that are located near universities that are very good high schools, like the high school of my son in Madison, Wisconsin. But if you look at the national distribution, then you see that this was on top of the world, and elsewhere it was, you couldn't even learn math there. And so my university was an assemblage of people from all over the world. Very nice, but you were wondering, are they doing something for their 15 to 18-year-olds so that they could reach the level where they could be professors at the University of Wisconsin-Madison? And I tell you, they did very little for them, if at all. And what I want to say is that during this period, all these sort of signs of decay in the provision that the society does for its members, they accumulated, with the result not just of the number of people who lived a hopeless life. And I'm saying that, I'm emphasizing hope, because in capitalism, hope is the glue that keeps a capitalist society together. This illusion that it will get better after all. You have to work your butt off, but then you're doing fine. And this illusion sort of disappears. What happens? on the margins of these societies in different forms, because the political systems are different. Groups form that are no longer willing to accept the written and unwritten rules of a liberal democracy, because they know that the liberal democracy is not doing anything for us. Now, as this happens, so the anti-centrist, unenlightened, right-wing nationalist or whatever opposition, because we as the left were unable to speak to them and explain to them what is being done to them. Yes, now everywhere. Now what happens then? Then our elites need something, glue, social glue, that replaces the social glue of universal hope and universal betterment. And then you can also say they need to restore discipline in their population. Follow us, believe us, do what we are telling you, even if what we are telling you is simply work harder so that Elon Musk gets even richer. Yes, and in that world, war is an important tool of disciplining your citizenry. Now you have an enemy of all, of each and all and everyone in our society. Now we have a cause to stand together, to show national solidarity against the enemy, against Putin. Putin has become a universal machine of destruction, like the devil. He's doing what he likes. You cannot talk to him because he is evil, sort of deeply evil individual. Now that is coming to us, and so we have to defend ourselves. What I think is that from at the latest, from the fiscal crisis, and then the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the disappearance of economic growth, the increasing inequality in these societies. You need something to try to reintegrate these societies, and war is not such a bad thing for the purpose. The problem is only it can get out of hand. Nobody of these people wants to be bombed by nuclear bombs. But what they are doing is, I think, they are playing with the fire. They want to keep this thing cooking, so that they can, for example, also promise their population that we will have all these wonderful weapons. We will have a boom in armament. We will learn artificial intelligence by testing all these wonderful killing machines that are no longer be operated by people, but by themselves. Yes, and so I think that this war is going on, even if someone like Trump comes in, and he may have been stupid enough not to understand the significance of war for our societies, or now he may or not. He may have had people who have told him. If he goes in and says, "I'm finishing the war in Ukraine in 24 hours," I am absolutely certain that our governments here in Europe, but also the deep state in the United States, these unbelievable masses of people employed by the CIA, the army, all these secret services, the arms manufacturers, they would have told him, "My God, Donald, don't overdo it. Yeah, a little war somewhere out there is not so bad for us. At least we have something to do. It is without any risk for us, And our European allies are happy if you keep the people sort of saluting to their commanding general because they are scared of the devil Putin. You understand what I'm saying? So in my view, these wars, in many ways, Palestine sort of fits into the picture with a few amendments. These wars are the last resort of political elites who have become unable to control the deep crises that beset their societies in the form of capitalism having lost the capacity to make people happy, if not here, then in an imagined future. Yes, then you need something else. In a way, the old formula was sugar. There's a great, beautiful tomorrow, guys. You have to work now, but that now it is the whip. If you don't obey, if you don't listen, Putin will come and will rape the German women, and therefore you will have to do something about Putin, and that means you have to follow what we are telling you.
Right. And that was a reality too towards the end of World War II. I found out from a very good friend of mine here who is from eastern part of Germany.
It was bilateral. We went in, killed what there was to be killed, and in the meantime took advantage of the condemned. And then they came back with a vengeance, absolutely with a vengeance, in my family too, and it absolutely. But one must say that after the war, there was a taboo in this. You have lived in this country, and you know German. There was a taboo on this, which meant that nobody talked about it either as a crime or as revenge or retaliation for another crime. What you can learn from the story, in my view, is that a war, once it is going on, gets out of hands. It gets out of control. The killing becomes a purpose in itself, and and that is if killing is a serious thing, you either get killed or you kill someone else, and neither of it is fun. You have to get used to killing others, or you can't get used to being killed because that is a one-time event. But after a while, people who go who fight in the field, they lose moral orientation. They become they become, people say they become animals, but the answer is no. No, animals don't do that. It's only human beings that fight wars.
You've talked about this in terms of Engels' theories on the means of destruction alongside the means of production.
Yeah. Yes.
How does modern military technology change the way the state organizes society?
Yeah, and I don't know because we don't know the modern military technology yet. It will at some point be told to us what these things are about. I'm deeply convinced there's machinery, killing machinery now that normal people like us have no idea of. It may be used in Gaza as a sort of testing site. Remember in Gaza they could, or still can, they can pick out of a population of 2 million people any individual that they want to kill. They can find where he is. Yeah, this guy who allegedly organized the October 7. I call it a prison breakout. The, that character, he then became known as the supreme commander of Hamas. He was killed by a drone, and the drone took a picture of killing him, and you see how he obviously had been wounded by something, was lying on a bed. He saw the drone come in through the window and waved at the drone because he knew what was going to happen, like this. There you are, and then they killed him. Yeah, the the technological capacity of doing this is absolutely mind blowing. They can send the thing through the window, and they can even tape the event. I mean, in my view, we don't know what sort of things are in the arsenals of either side in this Ukrainian war. And one reason to drag out this war potentially, and I believe that is possible, is simply to test the next generation of machinery, of means of destruction.
Well, you know Shoshana Zuboff's work on this
Yeah,
subject. She talks about the marriage of tech and state,
yeah,
maintaining that post 9/11, the line between commercial surveillance and state military surveillance was blurred. And we see
yeah.
this because what was the biggest sector to emerge in the job market from 9/11?
Very good.
It was everything from mall cop to airport security to whatever security, museum, university,
Yeah,
etc., all the way to what we began speaking about with ICE. So you've got this real
yeah,
crisis of this kind of merging of technology, as you said earlier, the bringing together of the private and the public sectors, which is extremely dangerous. Then the
yeah,
internet law as well in the
yeah,
EU,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah,
has
yeah.
basically it's made a problem for free expression. And then the way that the left and the neoliberal class has corroded the left, I have serious questions about the future because, as you rightly pointed out, this kind of optimism that is being sold to people to keep on keeping on. And that was Obama's model, wasn't
Yeah,
it? His motto was
yeah.
hope.
Yeah, no, no, it was already Clinton, the man from Hope. Yeah, he was
That's
born
right.
in Hope, Arkansas, and yeah, and they sort of announced this everywhere. Here's the man from Hope.
My question now is, what do we do with a left that is so fractured? I lived in New York. I took many buses from New York to DC for protests, and I would hear the bro dudes on the bus who were planning to be a little rowdy, and I made sure not to march with them. I'm not a big fan of violence in any kind of protest, but here we are with Michael Weiss, I believe, is the governor of Minnesota, basically giving the finger to Trump. And you have people that feel on the left that it's okay. I don't have to obey the law. I don't have to listen to the police. I don't have to do any. And I think we're at a huge impasse because this is part of neoliberalism as well. It's this kind of double narrative of there's a rule for us and there's a rule for you. So the same people I
Yeah,
marched with on DC for the rights of women to obtain safe abortions, and the police were, of course, called in to move people praying outside of the entryway to let people pass through. Give me your baby, they'd scream out. No, sir, you have to get back. This is illegal. And the left loved it when the police came in to enforce their rights. But
yeah,
now
yeah,
we're in this
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very strange, I mean, I love that you've called this era this kind of interregnum. That's where we are. You've written that neoliberalism is a project of social democratic parties adapting to mobile capital. How can the left reform a system that they've helped to create? Because now we're in this era where people are, I mean, it's very bizarre to hear people sound off about Gaza. They're against the genocide in Gaza. Some of these same people, though, supporting Israel in its genocide are feminists because look how many women wear burqa. And I'm like, they don't wear burqa in Palestine, but whatever.
Yeah.
So you see all this ideological creep. How does the left get beyond this?
I can't answer this question because I'm as puzzled as you are when it comes to the question: who is the force that could turn the tide? And the only answer I have is the answer not of a political strategist but of a sociologist. And that answer is based on a very famous phrase by Abraham Lincoln, for all things. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. Yeah, and what I mean here is that at the bottom of a society, as conditions deteriorate, you can always hope for, here to quote the chairman Mao, for 100 flowers blooming of expression of discontent, spreading horizontally around the society, initially without central organization, in the form of mutual contagion. That people are beginning to learn that things that they can rightly expect from the society that they live in are not being produced for them anymore. What can happen then? The moment you have this sort of growing, spreading discontent, still unarticulated, then you get all sorts of things that you don't like. People have very strange ideas about things. They're not educated enough to know how a revolution looks like. Lenin is missing, who could develop a theory of a party, a political party that absorbs this discontent. We have to hope for other people being intelligent enough to take up and lead into a progressive humanistic direction, this building and growing discontent, and learning on the way what modern forms of organizations of a revolutionary movement are. The Bolshevik Party was a great invention at the beginning of the 20th century, but it no longer can be a model to fight the high-tech capitalism that we now have. Remember that the important mode of, or most important instrument of Lenin to communicate with the people was a newspaper called Pravda, which was printed. There was no internet. It had to be distributed hand from hand to that is impossible today, and that is not what works. So we have to find new forms of communication. We have to learn to be willing to learn what the points of pressure are, where people can be told that something can be done, and what it is that can be done. And I'm talking about a long learning process that has to start at the bottom of a society. We, as intellectual elites, we can try to transport the signals, and we can try to run some instead of a program like you are, and then listen to the people. That's my suggestion.